Vodkast. Hello, Jeff Manchester, Manchester Music. It's been a little while since I've done a vodcast, and it's 11:45 on a Saturday, February 17th, 2018. I'm able to get through that sentence without slurring, so it's time for another drink. I'm not properly... there was a word my old supervisor for my master's did. He used, it was properly fortified. I've not yet been properly fortified, so Johnny Walker Black. Not a vodcast with a vodka. If you've noticed over the years, because it's been like a year. No, it's been like 2 years since the channel's been up. I've moved away from vodka. I don't know why. I still love vodka. In fact, I had a vodka soda earlier when I was watching Netflix and all this stuff with my girlfriend, and I've just been switching to scotch. I think it has something to do with the temperature in Canada right now. It's very cold. Celsius-wise, I think it's something like -6, -5, somewhere hovering around the 0 mark, depending on where you are and how high up you are. In this condo, in this building that we moved into, it's pretty consistently cold. So it always feels really freezing. So I think that's why I'm gravitating more towards Scotch whiskey, in this case, a blended Scotch whiskey. And also, if you watch any Christopher Hitchens, apparently this drink, Johnny Walker Black, was the official drink of like the PLO and Hezbollah, the IDF, and all the rest of it. So Johnny Walker Black is what he'd say. So that's what I'm drinking here. So that's what we're going to do. I feel like I should really do a better Christopher Hitchens impression, but let's just move on. So for this vodcast, I mean, it's going to be kind of like a life update, but also I am going to be answering some questions, and we're going to do a couple of like mix reviews, because a few people have sent me these mix reviews from what looks like a competition from, I'm not sure who. Looks like Junkie XL did a thing called Now Score This Furiosa competition, and I'm reaching back into my inbox from emails from like December and January, actually more from like November and December, and it looks like I've missed a couple where people are going, you know, can you have a look at this mix or whatever, and tell me what you think of this composition. So we're going to be doing that, even though it's probably well after the point where it matters, at least for this competition. I'm sure the winners have already been announced, and Junkie XL has delivered unto them, you know, some synthesizer full of his DNA from the 80s, whatever the prize was. Junkie, it's kind of hilarious that Junkie XL is doing. There's a weird trend, I think, in EDM and IDM and resident advisor type stuff, where all of these like not really techno guys, but just like, you know, EDM before it was a bad word, before it meant like erectile dysfunction music. All these EDM guys are going into like film scoring, and Junkie is really good. And I love what he's doing now, which is sort of like, you know, sharing his knowledge, because I think that people really need that. They need to see other people who don't come from these traditional streams where, you know, like I studied clarinet for 8 years and now I get to be in the inner circle of composers. Like, you know, we don't need those people. We know what they sound like, and for certain films and certain types of media, it sounds wonderful and it really suits it. But every now and then we have projects coming from niche cable channels, on-demand stuff like Netflix and HBO, where we really benefit from the Junkie XLs, from the Para Ones. And check out Water Lilies, one of my favorite movies, with an incredible score if you haven't seen that movie. And Para One, obviously Ed Banger, French Touch guy, incredible score from that. Even Air, where I guess we'll stay in France, those guys doing the Virgin Suicides for Jeffrey Eugenides' book, which was later put into film with Claire Danes and a bunch of other blondes. Incredible movie, incredible score from those two, and it's made all the more impactful, I think, and culturally relevant because these guys didn't come from, again, and no offense to the people who watch this channel who did study clarinet for a decade, but because these guys come from these very unorthodox streams, and that's, I think, where I find myself as a composer, those are my people, really. You know, Christian Henson did a video on recently, which I talk a lot about on this channel. If you really haven't been to Christian Henson music at YouTube or whatever, you must run, not walk, to go check that out. He did a video on how much does music theory matter, and I think most British people are very self-deprecating. He's a little more hard on himself than he needs to be. I've seen him play on his channel or whatever. He's extremely talented, and I think he's a better writer than he gives himself credit for. But he said something that I think really resonated with me, and that's, you know, if I knew any more than I did, if I was any more adept at, you know, theory and piano and scales or the rest of it, I'm not sure what I'd be losing. I'm not sure how much of my personality would maybe disappear with that added knowledge. So he sees sort of the deficits in his understanding of certain aspects of music theory as a kind of strength, as a way to sort of to stand out, if you will. I hate to paraphrase for him, but I think that's what he's kind of getting at. And I kind of feel the same way too. That isn't to say that I wouldn't be producing music that would be just as impactful and powerful and all the rest of it if I had studied the French horn for 10 years. But I think that what I lack in theory, I kind of, it expresses itself in other ways, which is maybe another way of saying that I don't think you need 10 years of theory to make people feel something when they're watching a movie and your music is behind it. Maybe you do in order to have a shot, but I feel like now more than ever you really don't. But anyway, oh my God, yeah, there's been a backlog of questions, and I really thank the people who are patient. This channel, by the way, since these vodcasts are pretty unedited and I get to say whatever I want, and most people who watch this channel I feel are waiting for reviews and overviews and all that stuff and tips, I get to kind of do what I want here, which is really nice. And I get to sort of be uninhibited and unadulterated. A lot of uns. I just want to say just thanks for everyone who makes this channel something that I want to continue contributing to. It's hard to do stuff in the dark. It's hard to do stuff for an audience you feel isn't there. And from the minute I started this channel back, I think 2.5 years ago, there's just been like this steady growth of people who've been contributing in a very positive way to this community, and also people who've been, critical and disagreeing with me. And that's the stuff that makes for like a really awesome experience online, when you have people who are so smart and they're asking such great questions that force me to go and Google and make sure that I know what I'm talking about so that I can bring back an answer that is going to honor the intelligence and it just honors the integrity of the person who asked the question in the first place. And having that sort of back and forth is really awesome to me. Especially with all the stuff that's been happening in the YouTube world with like the Logan Pauls and just the pay for plays and people who do and say anything to get clicks. I mean, I was working on a video for Isotope, and I was working with a crew, and this one guy was talking about how he had this channel, this YouTube channel. He's a really nice guy, and he told me about his girlfriend has a channel too. But his channel, he's like, you should check out my channel and all that. And I did, and he had all these these titles on the thumbnails, and it was like, I gave up. I think one of them was like, I gave up, like self-pleasure for like 100 days. Ask me how I feel. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I remember I told him like, oh, I saw that one video, like I gave up, fapping for X amount of days. Where he was like, yeah, that's just to get you to click on the link. And then like the video is actually totally different. Like it's just a hoax. It's all just a joke. It's just a prank. And it just feels really good, I guess what I'm trying to say here, to be in this space where people are watching and trying to learn something and just want to grow, and it's just nice to be in this space where like we get to have this back and forth, and you email me, I eventually get to your question totally wasted, and it's just, we're putting good out into the internet. I think this is why the internet is, or can be great anyways, because we're doing this. So thank you for contributing to that kind of space where it's not really about eyeballs and clicks. And I mean, I try and stay away from that personally when I do these videos. It's very tempting to put out a video that's just like, should you buy this Spitfire library? Big question mark. Or like, don't buy this, like, don't buy the latest orchestral tools library so you watch this video. And then I'm there doing that voice for like 40 minutes with jump cuts and like gimbal shots on my iPhone 10, slow motion of the library. Like, it's just, I don't know. I just want to be here and be myself, and you guys allow me to do that. And I feel like I haven't taken a moment to look you in the eye and be like, thank you for letting me be myself. So thank you for letting me be myself. One person asked, before we get to the questions and all that stuff, one person a while ago asked if I was going to do like Twitch stuff, like live streaming stuff. Honestly, whoever asked that question, I've had that question from a few. I'm just going to scratch my calf when we do this. Can I be honest with you? I'm going to scratch my body. I've had a few people ask if I do like a live thing and have people sign in and all that stuff. I toyed a long time ago with the idea of doing something like that, but I was just so nervous that like 2 people would show up, and it would just be me and like those two people, and it would be the saddest like PC pop and chips for people who are old enough to remember that term. It'd be like the saddest PC party ever, where we just sort of sit around and I'm just like, hey, two people that are joining me, and I'm someone who embarrasses really easily, which is kind of a really, you know, considering my career trajectory of being in front of people and now working for Isotope and doing demos and stuff like that. If I get stuff wrong, it stays with me for years. I remember this there's this meme of like some dude standing by the ocean looking out into it, and the caption was like me remembering my answer in 5th grade when someone asked for my attendance and I said here. Like you ever do that where you like, you know your name is coming and you're in grade school and you just, you know it's coming, and they're like, Jeff, and you're like, here, and you say it and you're like, oh, I screwed that up, shit. Even though you're just doing something super simple. That social anxiety just, anyway. So I embarrass super easily, and I feel like Twitch, you know, until I reach like Daniel James status where he has like this huge following of people who are hanging off every single word, that is not something I'm going to do. I mean, the channel is at 8,000 subscribers now, which is like, I don't know what that means. 8,000 people watching this. No, that doesn't happen. Like, I get views, I get like, but how many of those people that are subscribing or watching the videos, how many people are just like, you know, how many people are watching this now that were with me from the beginning? I don't know. But 8,000 people, I don't get 8,000 views on every video. So what seems to be happening is that people clicked my channel and way back and were like, I'm going to watch this guy. And then it's just like kind of a thing that it's like opening a tab on your browser and you just kind of never go over there, but you want to read that article, you know, you bookmark it for later. I think that's what that really means. So anyway, it's just this huge fear of me being, you know, with like 5 dudes talking about something that prevents me from doing a big Twitch live thing. I'm obviously very technically set up for it. I got the microphone, I've got a webcam, and we're all good to go. But I don't know, guys. Maybe in the future, I'll feel confident enough. Maybe if I hit that like 15,000 or 20,000 subscriber mark, I'll know on Twitter if I should just, you know, put out the bat signal and be like, hey, come join me over on Twitch. But until then, even like Twitter, like I don't have that many. I have like 350 followers, which is, I don't care, but I just don't feel like that number is enough to justify me being like, hey, stop what you're doing, come join me over on Twitch. It's just not, no. So anyway, I have been so sick. I swear to God, like I have been, this is turning into like a totally different kind of podcast. I have been super sick for since September, since AES, this thing in New York, which I went on well before AES, to be honest with you. I was in New York, but every time I travel, I have been so sick. People are going to be discovering the, you know, 1.752 times speed option on their YouTube browser player when they hear me droning on about this stuff. But it's been brutal. And if I could say anything to all of you guys, like, you know, whatever your immune system is, like, just take care of it. You know, if you're traveling, just hydrate like crazy. For me, it was sleep. It was that I wasn't sleeping enough. Whenever I go and do these shows, when I go to NAB or AES, I didn't go to NAMM this year because I was so sick. But even just going to the office in Boston with Isotope, I get funny when I travel, even though the trip from Toronto to Boston is like 90 minutes. I get funny when I travel, and I check into my hotel, and for whatever reason, I just can't get to bed. So it got to the point where last January, which was like my birthday, right around my birthday, right after my birthday, I went to Boston to Isotope just to check in and see how things are going, and do some videos and stuff, which are going to be coming out soon, I think. I got so sick that I had to come home early, a day early. I had to rebook my flights and everything. And the day after I got back, we have this thing in Canada called telehealth, well, in Ontario anyway, where you call a number and you give your symptoms. My symptoms were such that I couldn't breathe. And I've had like a respiratory seasonal asthma for every now and then, because it was dormant for like 10 years and it came back this year. So I had that. I had no flu-ish symptoms, which was what I thought it was, because when I was flying into Boston, I was checking Twitter, and it was like flu epidemic in the States. And I'm like, here I am, patient zero. Here we go. Fucking. I didn't have the flu per se, but I didn't have the chills or anything, but I was running a mild fever, but I couldn't breathe. And I gave the nurse all of my symptoms over the phone. It got so bad I had to hand the phone to my girlfriend because I just started to cry because I was just so overcome. And I don't cry too often. And I just burst into tears because I was in so much pain. I had this huge cluster sinus headache. I couldn't breathe. And the telehealth person was like, we highly suggest that you call an ambulance and go to the hospital. And me being, like, masculine, was like, no, I'm not going to go. And the woman was like, you have to go to the hospital. Please go to the hospital. Tell me you're going to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital. I was admitted. And I explained that I was having these breathing issues prior to this time or whatever, but I had what seemed to be some sort of bug. And they looked after me and saw me pretty quickly. In 2 hours, the whole thing was done. I had some saline injected, which was weird. I've never gone through that before. But anyway, I'm on the mend now, and I have gone to a doctor, and I've gotten sleeping pills. So now when I travel, I can at least make an attempt to get a good night's sleep, because I think that's what it is. I think that you can take all the vitamin C, and for the Americans watching, and I know there are a lot of Americans watching because my analytics tell me so. I take all the vitamin, take all the airborne is what you guys call it over there in the States. We don't have it here in Canada. Take all that stuff. It doesn't matter if you're not sleeping, if you get 3 hours a night. And I think when you hit 32, which is where I am, although it feels like with the receding hairline and the beard and the bags under my eyes, I should be at like a comfortable 45. When you hit that age and you don't sleep and you are creating conditions to get sick, you're going to get sick. So my advice, I don't know how we got here, hydrate like crazy, vitamin C, blah, 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 but just sleep. Sleep is so important. Just sleep, Okay, why don't we get to the questions for the Vodkast? I think I've gone over my life in tons of detail here. So we have a number of questions, and we have also some links on SoundCloud to this competition that I mentioned a while ago. And these people, Brett, and there's another guy, his name I'm forgetting or maybe not able to pronounce at this juncture, have asked me to review or just consider some elements of these songs. And I think this is going to be instructive for the people listening at home as well, because, you guys are all writing stuff and you want feedback and all the rest of it. So maybe your stuff will sound like their stuff, or maybe, you'll think about what I have to say about their pieces before you go to write your thing, or as you're going to mix, or whatever it is. So I'm just going to take a breath here and get into the questions. The first one is from Ryan Halverson, and this question was asked to me a very long time ago, so I'm going to do my best to answer it. Sorry it took so long. I'm just going to take a sip here and we'll get into it. Hey Jeff, I've been watching your videos for a while, he says, and am looking into starting a career in music, specifically freelance composing and session playing. One thing that I've realized while trying to start is that there's a lot of stuff I could buy, but I'm not always sure what is necessary. Amen, Ryan. I've been working with a 2009 MacBook Pro. That's old. I have one too. It's a dedicated Beamer, I think it's called. It just beams torrents to your TV. It's a dedicated Beamer machine at this point. And GarageBand, but I'm starting to see the limitations with these. I am looking into a new computer. I'm going to try my hand in building one so I can get a really good setup for this stuff. But I want to see, I want to set up a budget for myself so I know what to save for. I would just like to know your recommendations for absolutely the necessary gear, plugins, virtual instruments, and software, maybe even tips on what I should look for in computer parts, assuming you know computer specs. I'm currently unemployed, well that's going to be a problem, and wanting to start overdoing something I'm passionate about, so I don't have a ton of money to spend, but I know I need to spend some to make music I can be proud of. Ryan, first of all, get yourself a jumpsuit, all black, balaclava, okay? Are you a good runner? You're going to need to steal some stuff. No. Ryan Halverson, you sound Swedish. Halverson, you sound like a hockey player who is Swedish and then plays for the Leafs eventually, and we all root for you. Like you're going to turn things around, but no one ever turns things around for the Leafs. Okay, so you want to know what the bare essential sort of setup should be for a composer and what your budget should be. Now, I have had videos made on my channel to this topic before, where I've explained my setup. It's obviously evolved and changed throughout the years. Spitfire Audio's Christian Henson, who I seem to, apparently get money for talking about because I talk about him so much, has also made a video on his website, which I would urge you to check out as well. I think it's something very SEO, which is search engine optimization. It's something titled very SEO friendly, like, what should I start with? What gear should I start with? I'll give you the gist of it. I would say these days, I'd say 16 gigs of RAM, bottom line. And if you're going to go for a PC or a Mac, 16 gigs of RAM. You want to be able to run a lot of applications at once, a video and an audio engine that can talk to each other and not stall the machine. You're going to want to go for something, I'd say at least a terabyte of space on your hard drive. What a lot of people do, including myself, a lot of it, they'll have their internal flash drive or whatever at 500 gigs, and then they'll have a bunch of, a T5 or T3, which is a Samsung SSD, which will hang off the side of the computer or laptop, which is going to have all the samples on there from the sample libraries. What I do is I have a 500 gigabyte Fusion drive in my Mac Pro, which is late 2013. It's 6 years old now. It's crazy, but it's still doing pretty okay. But most of my samples are on a 4 terabyte Samsung Evo SSD, which ain't cheap. Just look that up. You'll realize how much money I spent on that. And I recently just picked up another SSD from, what are they called? Crucial. And it was 2 terabyte. And I only picked that up to lower the noise floor in my room because my old hard drive, 3 terabyte hard drive, which I was only using 2 terabytes of, was loud enough for me to notice, so I had to go for the 2 terabytes. So I transferred all my files from that to this. Bottom line is at least 16 gigs of RAM. I'd say at least, from 500 to 1 terabyte of internal storage. Go for flash if you can. Fusion is like, I don't know. Go for flash. Basically, you're getting, USB speeds in architecture, so you're getting a very quiet system. Whereas if you go for, a hard drive, you're getting moving parts, and that means they're going to be a little louder, which is probably not a big consideration for a lot of people, but more moving parts, the more things that can go wrong. As far as processors go, I don't know a lot about that kind of stuff. All I know is that my Mac Pro, which I'll go into the About This Mac to find, has the following specs. You seem to indicate that you know your stuff. So I'm just going to list off my stuff. This is by no means what you should have, but my processor is 3 gigahertz, 8-core Intel Xeon E5. My memory, my RAM is maxed. Well, it's not maxed out. It could go up to 128, I think, but I'm at 64 gigs of 1866 MHz DDR3 RAM. I'm running an AMD FirePro D300 2 GB graphics card. No idea what that means because I do very little graphic video work, so it doesn't really matter, but that's what I have. Anyway, so that is my setup. As far as, like a lot of people want to go with a Mac Mini that has that capability. If you're going to be working on a desktop situation where you're just staying in one place, a lot of people, Daniel James, Christian Henson, a lot of other people, they'll compose on the go and be nomadic. Daniel James had a whole nomadic composer series. For those kind of people moving around a lot, I might almost recommend a machine that would be portable. Again, not going with Mac or PC here, but I have for work, I've got a pretty specced out 2017 MacBook Pro, 1 terabyte internal memory, 16 gigs of RAM. It gets the job done. Got a pretty fast processor, and that's good if you're just on the road a lot, right? But it also doubles as a pretty reliable machine when you're just composing. at a desk or something, not going anywhere. Anyway, so there's that, but things top out pretty quick storage-wise with these sample. Once you get into the sample library game, like Spitfire and Vienna and East-West, so you're going to want some sort of external drive, and I would recommend hands down over an HD, get an SSD, again, for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. So what's next here? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, ditch the 2009 MacBook Pro. I mean, I have one too, but I've taken care of it a lot. I've replaced the battery. I've had 2 SSDs in that MacBook Pro, and it's showing its age. You want to know what recommendations for, plugins, virtual instruments. That's a tricky thing, dude. If you get something like Logic, which I'm not sure if you already have. You have GarageBand, so Logic is going to be a step up. But Logic is one of those things where if you get Logic, you basically get a number of excellent native plugins. What native means is it's proprietary. Apple developed it. It came with the company and with the computer. So not only do you get, I think, something like 80 gigs of instruments, so loops, virtual emulations of guitars and strings and all the rest of it, keys, but you're getting all these onboard effects, and they've recently released in 10.4 Logic X, they've recently released great vintage modeling of APIs and Neve and SSL, hardware outboard units for EQs and compressors and all the rest of it. They've had great vintage compressors since before the 10.4 update. So I mean, there's Logic is kind of a no-brainer, especially if you're coming from the GarageBand ecosystem. It is $299 in Canada. I'm not sure what it is in the States, but all the upgrades are free. So if they add more, chances are you're going to be adding less sample libraries from outside companies if you get to know the ones in Logic really well. And you get a bunch of great onboard effects. And I mean, the dirty little secret, I work for Isotope, is that a lot of those native plugins, the stuff that comes with the digital audio workstation, they're great and they'll get the job done. We at Isotope, if you saw the amount of work we put into research and development, we spend a lot of time coming up with new plugins that are more kind of revolutionary than evolutionary. But one of the kind of out there truths is that the stuff that just is on your computer, you've got really smart, talented people who care about audio working on those plugins that come with your DAWs. Ableton is another good example. Great onboard effects. So you're good there. This is not 10 years ago where you had to make sure that you had like a Waves bundle and maybe a UAD satellite, so you could run a bunch of native plugins from UAD and maybe a great rack mounted reverb or something. This is not, there is no better time to be a composer, really, I think. But you are going to have to spend a little bit of money on a couple of sample libraries, depending on the kind of music you're making. You're going to want a power synth, and that could be anything from AppSynth to Omnisphere 2. When it comes to strings and all that, again, you've got native stuff happening in Logic with the instruments, but there are some companies out there offering some pretty decent subscription models. East-West is one of them. Spitfire, they've got some good stuff too. Obviously, I talk about them a lot on my channel. I've done a couple of videos on sample libraries you should know about, and also what did I do? Solo string libraries you should know about, ensemble string libraries you should know about. So go and check those out too. I don't know the kind of music you're making, but hopefully this answer is going to give you an idea of where to start. So look at Christian Henson's blog for what kind of software you need and hardware setup. Take what I've said as well into consideration. And yeah, good luck. And hopefully you arrive at a system that allows you to be as creative as possible, which is really the goal here. It's not really about a piece of gear, a piece of software. It's about you being creative and confident in your composing trajectory. That being said, you probably need a computer and access to the internet to get, files from a director, video or whatever to compose to, and probably some sort of MIDI keyboard, which I didn't really mention, but I'm using a native instrument, the 2nd generation, the Mark II of the Complete Control series, which if you've seen my videos on this, I've had mixed feelings about. The build is sensational, but there's no there's no mechanical faders on it. It's all rotary and, rubberized pitch and mod wheel stuff, which is really not conducive to automation in my view. And there's this kind of strange marriage between the software and Native Instruments stuff called Complete Control. And I've been less than kind of thrilled with it. But a lot of other people are thrilled with it and love it, but just for my own sake, I wasn't totally enamored with it. So I would go and look at M Audio stuff for keyboards. They have a lot of really great stuff. M Audio, who else? Novation have some good keyboards and stuff. So anyway, there's nothing you can't learn on the internet. So go and good luck. And if you have any follow-up questions, please hit me up here. So let's go to the next question. Okay, who is this? Aki, I think. Hey, Aki says, I saw your video on YouTube and I'm really inspired the way you well explained. Okay, Aki's having some trouble. You have pretty good experience. Thank you. I am writer, and I'm not trying to make fun of you. That's how I read stuff. This is how you've written it. I am writer and make motivational speech in Punjabi and Hindi. I was in Sri Lanka. It's the closest I've ever been to India, by the way. So hello. I'm looking for music for my videos, but since I seen your video, I want to be composer. Thank you very much, Aki. Can you suggest me if I start to learn as a composer where I can go? Do you have any course? He asks me. Or if I want to buy motivational music, where can I go? What do you suggest? I will make my move. I love that sentence. I'll make my move. Thanks, and hope I will get a reply from you. You must be a busy guy. Bye, Aki. Okay, let's go into your questions one by one. The first is courses on how to compose music. My education really is limited to the internet. So it's me going online, watching people who I've talked about on the channel before, like Daniel James. I don't watch Junkie XL stuff, not because I don't like Junkie. I just don't. I don't know. I just don't. But there's Ask Video, lynda.com. There's probably Pure Audio or Pure Mix or something that probably do some composing stuff. There's a lot of people. I mean, even the other day I was watching Ashton Gleckman, I think is his name. Ashton Gleckman. I'm not really sure. He has a YouTube channel. There's a lot of people on the internet, and you really, you swing an axe with the search field on YouTube. You'll hit like 20 people if you just write like composer training course or whatever and hit search in YouTube. You'll find a lot of people. That's probably how you came across me. I am but one of many voices, and it's up to you to decide, who you want to learn from and follow and enrich your experience with. More than welcome to subscribe to my channel. It gets a little bit crazy around here because I have another life with iZotope. But I feel like I've been doing a pretty good job of uploading videos recently. But there's a lot of other voices out there that are really good at teaching and training. One dude is Rick Beato or Rick Beato. I'm not really sure. He's not for me, but he has a very popular channel. So maybe you can learn something from him. I feel like he's done a number of videos, or at least I've seen them. YouTube very desperately wants to suggest that I click on his videos. His videos seem to indicate, how to write in this chord, or like the secret key to this, or like, the power of John Williams in one video, very clickbaity title. So I'm sure maybe there's something over there to learn. Yeah, Daniel James, Ashton, who I don't watch a lot of Ashton's videos either, just because they're kind of a vibe that I'm not. He does like deconstruction of popular mixes out there, and those mixes I just don't really care about. But that's just me. He seems like a super smart dude who's very talented, so I'm sure you could learn a lot from him. There's just any number of ways. I really feel like if you have access to the internet, like there's just a multitude of voices out there. And it's up to you to decide where you want to learn from, who you want to learn from. So go out there and enjoy that. If I want to buy motivational music, where can I go? Oof, I don't know. If I want to buy motivational music, I don't know, Aki. I'm sorry. First of all, I'm not really sure I understand the question. I don't know what motivational music is, really. So I'm sorry. I can't answer that question. I'm sorry. Let's jump to the next question from Moshiko. Another really cool name, Aki and Moshiko. Hi, he writes. This is like super quick and easy. I love this. Hi. Is it too late to become a composer if I'm 22 years old? Boom. That's all he wrote. That's it. That's it. The answer is no. I'll be as curt as you were to me in your email. No. Dude, you're 22. I'm 32. There's a dude who started composing at like 90. He was in the New York Times, and he was on like Heavyosity's website and a bunch of other. No, absolutely not. No. And if you don't do it now, Moshiko, you were going to question the rest of your life whether or not you should have gone down this path. And for you, maybe it's not a path you should go down, but you only know if you go down the path and experience tremendous failure and sadness and all the rest of it. But I guarantee you, if anyone out there is older than me, my age or younger, and you're going, should I pursue composing? Should I do this? If you don't, you'll never know. There are people who can't do what we're doing. We'll put it that way. There are people who, like I've worked with adults with physical disabilities for like 2 years. There are people, and not to say that people with disabilities can't compose, but for them it's a bit more of a challenge. There are more variables. So if you're able-bodied and want to do it and 22 friggin' years old, what's stopping you? You know, what is stopping you? Do it, because you're going to regret it if you don't. And if you have all your faculties and are creative, then again, do it. And you know, I don't read as many questions that come from people like this, but it's something I talk about a lot. I get a lot of the I haven't gone to school. I don't know my theory. I don't know this. You know, I'm sorry. All you need in order to be a composer, a director, anything in the arts, all you need to be is passionate and creative, because through that passion and that curiosity and that creativity, you'll find the things you need to know. You'll learn the things you need to learn in order to get your music out there and make a difference. You will learn what you need to learn. You will find out where your knowledge gaps are and fill them in as you go. Not having gone to a fancy school, being 40 years old, or spending the first part of your life as a cop or whatever, none of these things are barriers to entry to being a composer and being creative. None of them at all. They're just mental hurdles, and you have to sort of find a way to get past your inner saboteur. By the way, if none of you are watching RuPaul's Drag Race, that's where that quote is from. You should watch it. It's incredible. But you really, you know, that could be your inner saboteur. Is ridiculous. Watch it. It's a great show. That could be where that's coming from. Just this thing that's trying to sabotage your endeavors and your dreams because you think you're too old, or you don't know enough as, you know, the next guy. You can't make someone cry with a guitar or a piano. You know, none of those things are reasons you shouldn't try to be a composer. You know, no one who is successful, I don't think no one who is successful that we know of that's really successful was ever, you know, sitting there waiting for permission to go and create stuff. So, you know, oh, here we go. I'm going to get my headphones ready here because we have some demos and I'm going to play them. I don't really care. I mean, people send this stuff to the Vodkast and they know that I'm going to play stuff out. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And by that, I mean, like, I'm going to click on these SoundCloud links and play them, and you're going to watch my body, watch my face as I sit and listen. And I'm going to take some notes, which is why I've had this pen here. What am I talking about? Let's tell you what I'm talking about. Hey, Jeff, long email warning. I appreciate that, Brett. He says, my name is Brett Canny. I'm going to put your full name on the internet. You're screwed, man. You're done. Whatever you've just been Mr. Roboted, okay? Everything. You've been doxxed. My name is Brett Canny. No one's watching. Me. And I am a composer / producer currently living in Woodland Park, Colorado. Heard some cool drone racing happens in Colorado. Some really famous drone racers. One of the guys named Jet, J-E-T, is from Colorado. Anyway. I stumbled across your channel while watching Christian Henson's vlogs. Good, my checks to YouTube for putting me in the suggested videos are working. Thank you. And now it's a joke. And I'm now hooked on your videos. I am honestly very picky about the YouTube channels I subscribe to and keep up with. Thank you. Right now it's Junkie XL, Spitfire Audio, Christian Henson, and you, Manchester Music. You are freaking hilarious. Thank you. Keep up the amazing work. All right. And here comes the ask, because he wants something, which is why he's being so flattering. I thought I'd send you the SoundCloud link to it too. I love this. I thought I'd send it to you. It's like, dude, you want me to listen to this? Come on. Don't pussyfoot around this, buddy. You want me to listen to this track. I thought I'd send you the SoundCloud link to a tune I wrote for Junkie XL's hashtag, now score this, hashtag Furiosa competition. Try saying that, drunk. I have a few questions, and I would love to get some feedback from you. He included the link. I'm a logic guy. We're not talking about reasoning. We're talking about the software. I just made a daunting switch from 9 to 10, or X, for instruments. I used a combination of Albion 3 Incenti, Whisper strings from Orchestral Swarm, Christian's triple felt piano. Wow, I think this is how Christian affords all those first-class flights and trains. This is why, because people like Brett are composing everything with Albion 3, Whisper strings, Orchestral Swarm, and the triple felt piano. I'm just being an idiot. But the dude does, can we just say this? The dude is always like, I got my Panasonic GH5. Now I got the GH5S. Now I'm like checking into a first-class hotel in freaking London. Now I'm on a first-class flight. It's like, okay, I get it. Now I know why your library is so expensive. I'm just taking the piss. I'm just taking the piss. Are we gonna get through this question? Find out in the next vodcast. No. Okay, so he wants to know. What does he want to know? Okay, and my tweaked versions of Logic's stock violin and viola samples. Needless to say, I am in love with Spitfire Audio. Yeah, saw that coming, Brett. Saw that coming, Brett. Our relationship is borderline toxic, if you ask me. Okay, here are my questions about the track. And this is what I like. If you're going to send me something about audio, guys, specific feedback is very important. So, he writes, the main problem I run into across while scoring is deciding on what the dynamic range, what I want the dynamic range to look like. I keep 1, 2, 3. I try to keep the beginning delicate and let the track grow organically. Does it sound convincing, or does it sound like the intro should be quieter to better contrast the dramatic sections at the end? I use ozone elements. Nice. Good job. Right now, it's all I can afford at the moment. Okay, easy on the guilt trip. Are there any tips you would give for mastering orchestral music with ozone elements? For this track, I use the Warm Tube preset mixed with my own EQ and multiband compression and Logic. If there are any other tips, composition-wise or mix-wise, feel free to let me know. I'm not a touchy person. Good, because I've been an idiot this whole time. So feel free to get as critical as you want. You can't hurt my feelings unless you tell me to give up on music. Spoiler alert. No. Thanks, man. Looking forward to hearing back from you. P.S. My favorite quote from you is, looks like I'm tweaking my nipples here. He's watched the channel. Brett's watched the channel. Why don't we click on the link? Hoping it's not going to lead to like some 8chan. No, we're good. Brett Canny Productions. Nice. Now score this. Furiosa Brett Canny. I'm going to put my headphones on and I'm going to listen. You're hopefully going to be able to hear what I'm playing here. And I'm going to press play. We're going to have a listen together, and then I'm going to answer Brett's queries in the order that he presented them. So let's get started on that. Let's have a listen. Let's do it. Okay, so... Oh, wait, I wanted to go to something else. Nope. Okay. So let's talk here. But I want to get back to your questions. Brit. That's my Flight of the Conchords version of your name. So you want to know a few things here. So the main problem is dynamic range. I try to keep the beginning delicate and grow organic. Does it sound convincing? By convincing, do you mean does it sound like it did the thing you were trying to do, which is to keep the beginning delicate and let the track grow organically? Yes. This is on. It did sound like you were trying to do that. And I think that for the most part you succeeded in doing that. I think the thing that allowed the track to grow organically were the, separate acts in the track. Act 1, I was just looking at my notes here, was all about the sort of the violins establishing the piece, and that the triple felt piano coming in very in focus and very sort of at the front of the track. Act 2 is maybe the horn section and the drum section, and Act 3 was that kind of snarl at the very end, which might have come from I'm trying to think here. It sounds like Albion 3 was in there. Maybe I'm wrong. So I think as a whole, what maybe allowed this track to grow organically, maybe we're thinking of the word organic in two different ways, was the fact that there was variation. There were chapters, things moved. There was rising action, falling action. And I felt, for the most part, I think things really transitioned well. I think one of the more clever moments was when I'm trying to see what I wrote here, was the drum intro. When you introduce rhythmic elements, I think that was very effective in going, oh, what's happening now? I know that's how I felt when I first heard that part. I was like, oh, this is okay. Things are kind of changing. So I think, grow organically, yes. I think that's by the standards that I just set up, and that, we have acts that we move through, yes. I think that was. Does the intro sound like it should be quieter to better contrast the dramatic sections to the end? I don't think making things quieter is the answer. And by making things quieter, I mean a volume shift, or loud. Volume is like, science and beakers and stuff. We should say loudness. I don't think things need to necessarily be quieter. I think that having the quiet loud relationship or dynamic is kind of lame, if I'm being totally honest. It works for some people who know how to really exploit it, like Mogwai or something, doing quiet loud stuff. I don't think the answer is necessarily having quieter sections. I think maybe what you want to be looking for more is having an arrangement, which is the order in which things happen in a song, or in your case, in a composition and a production, having the arrangement have more or less energy in certain moments. And more or less energy could mean having fewer instruments, or having those instruments play less aggressively, or having those instruments be panned in the stereo field very much to the center, to 12 o'clock, to the, the phantom center, the mono aspect of the audio signal. And then maybe something a little busier or more intense, things could be panned wider, or we could have more instruments. So we only have 2 violins starting out, and they're both panned to the center. And then we have a more energetic area of the song where those things are, they multiply by a factor of 2 or 3 or 4, and we have more instruments and they're panned wider. I think that is a better way to talk about quiet versus loud, or what you say here should be quieter to contrast the dramatic sections at the end. I don't think we should play with loudness. I don't think we should have a really quiet section, then a very loud section later on. I think that's I think it's a kind of a lazy way to achieve that, and a smarter way to increase the drama, increase the energy, is instead not playing with loudness, but playing with energy. It could be something like, again, having fewer tracks. Think of a pop song. Songs are, all this stuff is very similar. Think of a pop song. When you have a verse, you have maybe less low frequency energy. Maybe the vocal has been stripped of its low end. Maybe you only have one vocal. Maybe you only have two guitars and you've only got, a kick drum. But once we reach the bass, we have, background vocals, which add a richer vocal line. We have a very deep low end coming from a bass and a kick drum now. And we have all that stuff panned all over the stereography, which gives a kind of, a panoramic sound and entrance to that chorus. And then we get back to the verse and we get fewer instruments and things folded into the middle. And the same tricks, I think, can really be applied to the orchestral composing world to great effect, and it's something that I do a little bit with my own scores, namely with mic positions. Spitfire, since we have a bit of a love affair with them, I'm going to sit up straight. Spitfire, they have this most sample libraries do, but they make it pretty accessible there on the front page. They've got this mic array, right, where they have the close mics, the outriggers, the tree, and some other mic setup. You could have this quiet, loud dynamic, this in focus and maybe out of focus thing happening in your mix by making sure that that certain instruments are all ambient mic'd. They're all, with the decatry, so they're very far away. And you kind of did that a little bit. We're getting into a different discussion now, but you did that a little bit to, I think, very successfully to great effect with the triple felt piano coming in, because everything felt kind of very far back, and then the felt piano came in. It was very in focus, and that provided, I think, a very successful contrast. But one thing I do, again, just getting back, is elements that I want to be in focus in the mix are close mic'd C, right? And I turn them up, whereas stuff like the Evos, all that stuff is usually ambient mic'd or with the outriggers or something super far away, because I don't want those things to be in front of you. I want, the solo instruments to be in front of you with the close mics. So that's something to think about too. So instead of playing with volume and loudness, think about being economical with the number of tracks you have and playing with panning and playing with low frequency and high frequency and that kind of stuff. So that'd be one way to answer the question that you're asking me here. What's the other thing you asked? You're asking me about mastering. It's hard for me to assess this one, man, just because I don't know. I'd kind of like to see the mastering chain a little bit, because I don't know what you necessarily did with ozone elements. It is a pretty comprehensive tool. If you're using the one, I think you're probably using ozone 7 elements. Ozone 8 is a bit. We give you a bit more to play with in ozone 8 than ozone 7. Ozone 7 elements is a bit more of like a preset thing. You said that you went with the warm tube preset mixed with your own EQ and multiband compressor. Got it. So I can't, if we're side by side together, very close to one another, drinking scotch and, cheek to cheek, I could get into it with you on your mastering chain if I could see what you're doing. But if I don't know what you're doing, I'm not really sure. But one thing I wrote down, why don't I get to my comments about this? Because I think you deserve to know what I've written down here. So okay, we'll get back to the ozone thing, because I have a couple things to say about that. But the bottom line here is, what have I written down? Okay, so let's see here. So the first thing is that I wrote is, I found the violins to be at the very beginning, at the very top of the composition, to be somewhat unrealistic, if I'm being totally honest with you. They sounded very two-dimensional compared to the rest of the stuff that was in the rest of the mix, which sounded to me pretty real. Now, I want to qualify this by saying that this mix might be fine for a mock-up. So a mock-up is, this fully digital kind of MIDI piece that is eventually going to get into the hands of an arranger and an orchestrator who will, translate it into notes and give it to an orchestra. If that's the case, then it's a fine mock-up as far as the violins are concerned. But if this is meant to be a kind of like going into a TV show or something where TV doesn't always get the luxury of heading to a sound stage and being played by a big orchestra, I would say the violins really sounded super unrealistic to me. They sounded very much like did these come from Logic? I don't know. Logic stock violin and viola samples. Yeah, I would maybe try to go for something from Spitfire. Maybe their solo stuff, which I'm not actually a big fan of, to be honest with you. I'm more a fan of the Orchestral Tools solo violin and the Veer Harmonics Bohemian violin. Those are both great. And people say really nice stuff about the Embertone stuff. So I'm sure those are really good too. I just found that they kind of undermined a lot of the integrity of the rest of the track, where you had a lot of really beautiful sounding stuff, to be honest with you, that sounded super realistic. The opening is really in many ways a first impression. And for me, I felt like those violins they sounded way too programmed for me. And I'm just being totally honest because you asked me to be totally honest with you. So next up, there's a strange vibrato. Let me see if I can go back here. A strange vibrato happening. If I go back to your SoundCloud, I'm going to play this over here. I'm just going to have to listen fresh. Okay, there it is. So it's right around like the 58-second mark. Never mind the 1 minute mark. Hear that? It almost sounds like it's sort of like on a loop. It's kind of cycling. So to me, that moment there sounded a little bit off. Again, just to me, it sounded a bit weird that it was so, what's the word that I want to use? It was like oscillating a little bit. That could be a Evo thing or something else, but it brought a little bit too much attention to itself. And I would think about maybe lowering the fader there on the Evos just to sort of bring our attention away to whatever's happening in that region, personally for me. Okay, so overall, those are my thoughts. I wanted to say I enjoyed the nice horn intro. Love the drum intro. One of the things I wanted to sort of mention was the low end appears to be kind of missing from this track. I wasn't able to throw it into a spectrum analyzer and get you like hard facts on this or whatever, but I just felt like it kind of wasn't wasn't really present. And I'm talking about like, from around 0 to 300 or 400 hertz. It just didn't have much of an impact, with the exception, I think, of some of the drum hits and stuff. So that might be something that you want to investigate or at least accentuate with some sort of EQing at the very end in the mastering or the mixing phase, just boosting those low frequencies just to add a bit more sort of body to the track. But I've been kind of nitpicky on the whole. I really feel, Brett, like there are a lot of excellent ideas in this track, and you've managed to corral them and organize them in a way that I think leads to a really awesome experience for anyone listening to this track. It's no wonder that I think there are a lot of really positive comments on the SoundCloud link, and people seem to be really digging it. And so I think that's a testament to again, the diversity of ideas in that track and the way that it was all put together. I just think that those violins have to go. The stock violins just got to go. The piano was very nice. Very upfront, nice contrast to what was happening in the background. Again, really interesting stuff for the ears, which is what it's all about. It's keeping your listeners delighted and excited and, what's happening now sort of thing. And I think that you achieve that. So anyway, that's what I have to say for you, Brett. Last question here. This is from I don't know how to pronounce his name, but same kind of deal. So he goes, "Hi, first I want to thank you for making these videos. They are really helpful. You're very welcome. I'm 16 years old and my dream is to compose music for movies. I have already worked on some documentaries, but not much else. Good for you, man. That's really awesome. I submitted this track for a contest called #NowScoreThis by Junkie XL. I had a hard time blending a pluck sound with some strings, but I think I got it right. I was also thinking about if the track was too repetitive. So my questions are, do you think the pluck sound blends well with the strings? Is the track too repetitive? Here's a link," he writes. So let's have a listen to the track. Okay, thanks very much for sending that in. I'm going to give you my thoughts, first by addressing the questions that you had, and then sort of giving you some stray thoughts and observations. So, number one, do you think the pluck string sounds blend well the pluck sounds blend well with the strings. If I'm being totally honest with you, I don't know if they do. I don't think they do. When the piano comes in to sort of support them, I think it's a little bit better. I'm just going to play this again. Is that the pluck sound that you're talking about? So for me, the reason I don't think they blend in very well is because they're a little hot, they're a little loud, and also they just sound very synthetic against the backdrop of these sort of, more realistic cascading strings that you have going on. I'm trying to be careful because you're 16, and I have to say, this is very, very good. This is better than anything that I could have put together, I swear, at 16. But I also just want to be like as honest as I can. And I think that no one really is able to grow and learn if people are dishonest with everyone and everyone's sort of patting each other on the back, which is kind of an internet phenomenon where we all just say, great job. And then we say, how about listen to my track now? And it's just, that's not productive. So just want to say, at 16, you're going in a very, very good direction, I think. But if you want me to be honest with you, I think those pluck sounds, they stick out like a bit of a sore thumb until they're supported by going down a little bit and having these pianos come in. Like, listen to these cascading things that you've done here at the beginning. And then here comes the pluck. Now if what we're going for is something that is a bit more of a hybrid digital meets analog orchestral, then it might work a little bit. But I feel like with the context that you've set up, those plucks, they do a bit of a disservice, I think. They undo a little bit of hard work that you've set up in the first section, I think. So I would have to say I don't think those are the right sounds for this arrangement. I really don't. Is the track too repetitive? Well, again, if I'm being honest, we have to be careful here. If we listen to Brett's example, why can't you be more like Brett? No, I grew up with a sister, so that's why I'm making that joke. Older sister. So if we listen to Brett's song, you'll notice that we had, 3 different acts where we had different ideas explored in each one of those acts. Now, Brett's piece might be a little bit more, a little bit different because he might have, gone around the sun a few more times than you. But the idea here is that when we play with a loop-based arrangement, which is kind of what we're doing here with your track, which is fine, we have to be careful with loop-based stuff when we have a bar that repeats, where we have a bar of string MIDI and then we sort of copy and paste that over and save it for the end, and then we have more MIDI that comes in. The ear gets used to that stuff and starts to notice the patterns that kind of come out of that kind of loop-based arrangement. So we have to be careful when we do loop-based arrangements because things do start to sound a little bit repetitive. In the case of your track, there were certain elements that I thought worked really well. I thought that once that plucked instrument that you asked about in the first question went away, I felt like the track took kind of a different, more adult kind of feel. It sounded a little bit more accomplished, if I'm being totally honest with you. But there were some sort of giveaways that we were dealing with loops. One of the giveaways was, maybe not necessarily a giveaway. I'm just looking at what I wrote here. Well, first of all, the layering was really good, but one of the giveaways was the automation. I felt like you had some loudness automation that would go and ebb and flow. This got a little bit repetitive. I don't know if it was, I'm not sure if it was the strings or whatever, but I felt like the whole track sort of opened up and then it closed, and then it closed, then it opened up, then it closed back again. And that kind of automation is, first of all, your instincts, I think, are appropriate. It's really good to do that, to bring things to life. But I felt like it became so kind of expected that things were going to open and close, that gate was going to open and close, and it kept happening, that it felt a bit to me like, okay, not only are we dealing with a loop-based kind of arrangement, but the automation envelopes seem to be opening and closing too, which can kind of distract you from what's happening in the track, which I thought, as a feel, the vibe that you created was quite beautiful. So we have to be careful of that too. I'm trying to look at what I wrote here. Automation, yep. If you've had a bunch of scotch, here's a little tip for you. Don't start writing by hand. It's a bit of a mess. Also, the cello, I think, that happened at 320 sounded a little bit artificial to me again. This thing here. Now, this could be because you're working with stock instruments from a digital audio workstation that maybe has less flexibility and less realism in the strings. But I've heard people make a lot of really very stocky, native-y sort of strings before in their DAW. So it could be that what you need is a bit more sensitivity and care put into how the string passages overlap in your grid and how you're automating them with sustain and release and all that stuff. It could be that that's what's needed. But I think, to me, what took me out of your arrangement, out of your piece, was the loop-based stuff, the automation envelopes opening and closing, and that cello at the very end all kind of took me out of the theater of the track and reminded me that I was listening to something that was probably composed on a computer, if I'm being totally honest with you. So I think that the realism needs to be considered the next time. Automation, which is a wonderful thing, should be more careful with it when it happens, and it shouldn't sort of happen in a repetitive, structured way. If that's what you're doing, I could be totally off. I don't know what your session looks like. And also loop-based stuff. I think there are some lessons for you with Brett's arrangement in that, again, it has different sides to it. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 are all distinct, but they're all combined in a way. They're all joined by similar instruments, namely that triple felt piano that comes in and out, giving the piece a kind of consistency. So that would be my advice for you. Thank you so much for sending in this track to me. I haven't done one of these in a long time, and I know you've been super patient, so thanks for waiting. Okay, I think, it's at 10 after 1 in the morning. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Fortified Vodkast. And yeah, if you have any questions for me, Vodkast podcaster, I don't even know, at gmail.com. And yeah, okay. I'm more tired than drunk. Promise. Take care.